Ethan Walker laughed out loud in front of 11 neighbors, pointed the neck of his beer bottle at the woman who spent every weekend fixing everybody else's problems, and said it. "At this rate, Lily, you'll never find a husband." The yard went dead quiet. Lily Carter set down her plate. She crossed the grass, stopped an arm's length from his chest, looked up at him and smiled. "Maybe you're why." Ethan didn't move for 11 seconds. Nobody breathed. And what? None of them knew, not the neighbors, not his daughter, not even Ethan, was that Lily had signed a paper 2 days earlier that would take her 900 miles away in 19 days. Stay with me to the end of this one, because the truth behind her smile is not what any of them expected. And do me a favor, drop the city you're watching from in the comments so I can see how far this story has traveled. Subscribe, and let's begin. Ethan Walker had spent 11 years being the man people called. Not the man people invited, the man people called. There's a difference, and by 39 he knew it better than he knew his own middle name. Furnace quits at 2 in the morning in January, call Ethan. Transmission starts slipping on his way to a granddaughter's baptism, call Ethan. Garage door comes off the track. Water heater floods the basement, timing belt snaps on the interstate outside, golden call. Ethan. He'll come, he won't charge you what he should, and he won't stay for coffee afterward. He owned a 2-bay repair shop off the frontage road with his name stenciled on the glass, and he raised an 8-year-old girl named Emma, who had her mother's chin and her mother's stubbornness, and God help him, her mother's habit of asking questions he didn't want to answer. That was his life. Grease under the fingernails. School lunches in brown paper. A house with a woman's handwriting still on the label of the fuse box because he'd never had the heart to replace it. And that Saturday in June, the whole street was in Ray Dominguez's backyard because Ray had turned 62 and his wife had decided a man that age deserved ribs. Ethan almost didn't come. "You're coming," Ray had said 2 days earlier, standing in the shop doorway with his arms crossed. Ray was retired from the power company. 34 years on the lines, 2 bad knees, and absolutely no patience for a man who hid behind a toolbox. "I've got the Callahan truck to finish. The Callahan truck will still be broke on Sunday." Ray. Ethan. Ray had let the name sit there a second. "You've turned down every invitation on this street since March. People stop asking eventually. You know that, right? That's how it happens. Nobody decides to leave you alone. They just get tired." Ethan had wiped his hands on a rag and said nothing. "Bring Emma," Ray said. "Bring the girl who lives at the end of the block. Bring somebody. Just show up." So he showed up. Checker. Lily Carter had moved on to Pinewood in October, into the little gray house with the dying juniper hedge that everybody had complained about for 6 years. She was 29. She ran a landscape design business out of a truck older than she was. She was in the polite phrasing of Marlene Prine 3 doors down, a big girl, a phrase Marlene said, with her head tilted like she was doing somebody a kindness. By April that dying hedge was gone, and there were black-eyed Susans coming up where it used to be, and Marlene had told 4 different people that the new girl had really improved the corner, without once mentioning who'd done the improving. Ethan had met her the second week she lived there when her truck wouldn't turn over, and she was standing in her driveway with the hood up at 6:40 in the morning, hitting the starter with the heel of her hand. "That's not going to work," he'd said. "It worked in 2019. Then you got lucky in 2019. She'd laughed. He remembered that. He remembered it because it had been a real laugh, loud and unembarrassed at 6:40 in the morning in front of a stranger, and Ethan Walker had not heard a sound like that in his driveway in a very long time. He'd fixed the starter that Saturday. She'd paid him in a redesign of the backyard he'd let go to hell after Sarah died. Sarah's roses, half of them dead, the other half fighting for their lives against a man who kept meaning to get to it. "You don't have to do that," he'd said. "I know I don't. It's a lot of work." "Ethan." She'd looked at him over the top of a rusted wheelbarrow. "You spent your Saturday under my truck. Are we going to argue about who owes who, or are we going to get something done?" That was 8 months ago. Since then, it had become a thing without either of them ever agreeing to it. Saturdays, sometimes Sundays. Her on her knees in his dirt, him on his back under her chassis. Emma running between them with a juice box narrating everything like a sportscaster. They talked. That was the part Ethan couldn't explain to anybody, including himself. He was not a talker. He had gone entire days speaking fewer than 40 words. But something about a woman working 3 feet away from you with her hands in the ground, not looking at you, not waiting for you. It took the pressure off. Words came out that he had never said to the grief counselor the hospital had recommended, and he had gone to exactly twice. She used to hum, he'd told her once in March, apropos of nothing sanding a fence post. Sarah, she didn't even know she was doing it. She'd be doing dishes humming and I'd say, "What song is that?" And she'd say, "What humming?" Lily had kept working. That was the trick of her. She hadn't turned around and made a face. She hadn't said, "Oh, Ethan," she'd just kept troweling. What did you do about it? About what? The humming. After he'd stopped sanding. I turned the radio on, for about a year. Any room I walked into the radio went on first. And now? Now I don't. She had nodded once at the dirt. That's progress. Nobody else in 11 years had called it progress. Everybody else had called it time healing, and Ethan had wanted to put his fist through a wall every single time. So that was the history sitting in Ray Dominguez's backyard on a Saturday in June, with a paper plate on his knee and 11 neighbors around him. Lily was, of course, not sitting down. She was refilling the ice in the cooler because nobody else had noticed it was gone. She was cutting Marlene Prine's brisket for her because Marlene's hands shook now, and Marlene would rather starve than say so out loud. She was down on one knee in the grass in front of Ray's grandson, showing him how to unstick the wheel on a toy dump truck. She had at some point in the previous 40 minutes walked to her own house and come back with a folding table because Ray didn't have enough. Ray leaned over toward Ethan and said quiet, "Somebody ought to make that woman sit down." "Good luck." "Not me. I'm 62. I'm decorative now." Ray took a pull on his beer. "You do it." "Why me?" Ray gave him a long look. The kind of look a man gives another man when he's decided not to say the thing he's thinking. "No reason," he said. And then Trent Boyle, who was 26 and worked at the dealership and had the personality of a car alarm, said too loudly from across the yard, "Lily, sit down. My God, you're making the rest of us look bad." And everybody laughed. And Ethan, because he was 2 beers in, because he was relaxed for the first time in months, because some part of him wanted for once to be a guy at a barbecue who said the funny thing instead of the guy standing near the grill saying nothing. Ethan raised his bottle and said it. "At this rate, Lily, you'll never find a husband. You spend all your time fixing everybody else's problems." He said it in the voice you use for a joke. He knew he said it in that voice, and he would replay that fact 100 times over the next 3 weeks, trying to make it matter, and it would never once matter. Because the yard went quiet. Not all at once. First, the laughter thinned out. Then Marlene Prine's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Then Ray Dominguez said, "Ah hell," under his breath, so quietly that only Ethan heard it, and Ethan felt the bottom drop out of his stomach a half second before he understood why. Lily stood up from the grass. She brushed off her knees. She took her time about it. She set the toy dump truck in Ray's grandson's hands and said, "There, now it rolls." And then she walked across that yard toward Ethan Walker, and she was not hurrying, and she was not upset, and that was somehow worse than either. She stopped in front of him. "Say that again," she said. Ethan's mouth was dry. It was a joke. "I know it was. Say it again." "Lily." Ethan. Still smiling, still perfectly calm. "You're a grown man. Say the joke again." The whole yard was watching. 11 people. 12 counting Emma, who had stopped dead by the cooler with a popsicle in her fist. Ethan cleared his throat. "I said at this rate you'll never find a husband." And Lily Carter looked up at him and said, "Maybe you're why." Nobody moved. Ethan felt his own pulse in his neck. He felt 11 pairs of eyes on the side of his face. He felt something in his chest go through a door he did not remember unlocking. Lily held his eyes for exactly as long as it took to be sure he'd heard it. Then she reached past him, picked up the empty chip bowl off the table behind his elbow, and said in an entirely normal voice, "Ray, you want me to open the other bag, or are we done?" "We're done," Ray said. "Okay." And she walked into the house. The yard exhaled. Somebody laughed the wrong kind of laugh, the kind that's trying to put a fire out with a paper towel. Trent Boyle said, "Okay," and got up to get another beer. Marlene Prine started talking about her hydrangeas at a volume nobody needed. Ethan sat there with a paper plate on his knee and did not move. Ray leaned in without looking at him. 8 months, Ray said. "What? 8 months she's been in your yard every Saturday, and you sat there just now and looked surprised." Ray shook his head slowly. "Son, I've got 2 artificial knees, and I saw it in October." He found her in Ray's kitchen, rinsing a bowl she did not need to rinse. "Lily, don't." She said it gently. She kept her hands in the water. "Don't do the thing you're about to do." "What am I about to do?" "You're about to apologize in a way that makes it not have happened." She shut the faucet off. "I've had it done to me before. It's fine, but I'd rather you didn't." "That's not—" He stopped, started over. "I didn't mean it the way it sounded." "How did you mean it?" "I meant you give everything away, Lily, to everybody. You've got Marlene calling you at 9 at night about a sprinkler head. You did the Hendersons' whole front yard for free. You've got a business, and you spend it on other people's weekends, and somebody should—" He ran out of air. "Somebody should be looking out for you. That's what I meant." Lily turned around and leaned back against the counter and folded her arms and looked at him for a long moment. "You know what the funny part is," she said. "That's genuinely a nicer version. And it still ends with, 'So you'll die alone.'" "I didn't say, Ethan." She wasn't smiling now. "I've been hearing some version of that sentence since I was 14 years old. From aunts. From a boyfriend in college. From a man I went to dinner with in Fort Collins who spent 40 minutes telling me I had such a pretty face. There is a whole language people use around women who look like me, and every word of it is trying to be kind, and every word of it means the same thing. Lower your expectations, sweetheart, and be grateful." Ethan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "And the reason it landed different from you," she said quieter, "is because you are the one person on this entire street who has never once talked to me in that language. 8 months. Not one time. Do you know how rare that is? You just talked to me like a person. You handed me a wrench, and you told me my brake lines were shot, and you never once looked at me like I was a project or a punchline." She let that sit. "And then today you did." Ethan felt something crack open in the middle of his chest. "Lily, I'm sorry." "I know." "No, listen to me. I'm sorry." "I know, Ethan." And there was the smile again, small and tired. "You don't have a mean bone in your body. That's the whole problem. Mean I know how to handle. Mean I've been handling since middle school." She picked up a dish towel and dried her hands. "It's the careless ones that get you." She moved to go past him and Ethan without deciding to put his hand on the doorframe. Not blocking her, just there. "What did you mean?" he said. "Maybe you're why." Lily stopped, and for the first time in 8 months, Ethan Walker watched that woman lose her footing. It was small. It was a half-second. But he had spent 11 years reading engines by sound, and he knew the exact moment a thing that had been holding stopped holding. "You know what I meant," she said. "I want to hear it." "No, you don't." "Lily, you don't, Ethan." She turned to face him fully. "Because if I say it out loud in Ray Dominguez's kitchen, then Monday comes and you get scared and you start being busy. And I've seen a man get busy before. I know exactly how it looks. It looks like a text that takes 6 hours. It looks like, we should get that garden finished sometime. It looks like the whole thing sanding down to nothing so slow that neither of us ever has to admit anything happened." She shook her head. "I like Saturdays," she said. "I like your kid. I like your dumb dog that isn't even yours. It's your neighbor's, and it just decided it lives with you now. I have a good thing on this street, and I'm not going to blow it up so you can feel flattered for a weekend." "That's not—" "Then prove me wrong," she said. "Not now. Not in here with everybody outside listening through the window, because I promise you Marlene is listening through the window." From the other side of the wall, very faintly came the sound of Marlene Prine moving a lawn chair. Lily raised her eyebrows. Despite everything, Ethan laughed. Once, painfully. There he is, Lily said softly, and she walked out. He drove Emma home at 8:30. Emma was quiet for 4 blocks, which for Emma was roughly the equivalent of a coma. Ethan kept both hands on the wheel and pretended not to notice. Then at the stop sign on Larkspur, Dad. Yep. Was that a fight? No. It looked like a fight. It wasn't a fight, Em, because you said the thing, and then everybody stopped talking, and then Miss Lily went inside. Emma had her arms crossed. 8 years old in a booster seat, and Ethan felt like he was being deposed. That's what a fight looks like. Ethan pulled into the driveway and put it in park, and sat there with the engine ticking. I said something I shouldn't have said, he told her. And I told her I was sorry, and she was nicer to me about it than I deserved. Emma considered this. Is she still coming Saturday? I don't know. You don't know. Emma's voice went up. Dad, she was going to help me with the volcano. I know. You said something bad, and now I don't have a volcano. Emma. That's not fair. Emma. He turned around in the seat. She stopped. And Ethan looked at his daughter, at Sarah's chin, at Sarah's exact expression of outraged justice, and he said, You're right, it's not fair. That one's on me. I'm going to fix it. Emma sniffed. Okay. You're good at fixing stuff, she said, unbuckling. It's basically your whole thing. He did not sleep that night. He lay in the dark with his hands behind his head and did the arithmetic he'd been refusing to do for 8 months. I was 39. She was 29. He had a kid, a mortgage, a shop with a leaking roof, and a good 1.5 years of debt still on the lift. He had a dead wife whose handwriting was on the fuse box. He had 11 years of habits built entirely around not needing anybody, and a therapist he'd fired, and a Christmas card list where he was still writing the walkers like there was more than one. And she was God. She was the woman who noticed the cooler. She was the woman who cut Marlene's brisket without making Marlene ask. She was the woman who, when Emma had come home in February crying because a boy named Dylan told her she couldn't be on the science team, had sat on the porch step with his daughter for 45 minutes, and Ethan had heard her say, Okay, so here's the thing about people who tell you what you can't do most of the time, they're just telling you what they couldn't do. He'd stood on the other side of the screen door with a dish in his hand and not moved for a full minute. And he had told himself that night and every night after the same 3 things. She's 29. She's got her whole life. She deserves somebody who isn't carrying 11 years of dead weight up a hill. At 2 a.m, Ethan sat up in the dark and finally said the 4th thing out loud, the true one, the one under all the noble ones. You're scared. The house didn't answer. Joel. Monday, he went to the shop at 6 and worked until 7 at night. Tuesday, the same. Wednesday, Ray Dominguez came in and stood in the bay with his arms crossed. You get busy, Ray said. Ethan didn't look up from the alternator. I am busy. Uh-huh. Ray? I'm just standing here. You're not just standing there. You're standing there like my mother. Ray pulled up the stool by the parts bench and sat down on it slow, the way a man with 2 bad knees sits. You know what I did after Denise's first husband died, Ray said. Before she was Denise Dominguez, she was Denise Ruiz, and she lived on Cedar, and I was 31 years old, and I did nothing for 2 years. 2 years, Ethan. I mowed her lawn. I fixed her gutters. I shoveled her walk. I did every damn thing a man can do for a woman without ever once saying a word, because I had decided, and I was very noble about this, that she deserved better than a guy who climbs poles for a living. He shook his head. 2 years. You know what changed it. What? She got tired and asked me out. Ray laughed short. 36 years of marriage, 3 kids, and I did not have the guts to start it. She did. And I've had to live with that, and I'll tell you something, every single time I think about it, I don't feel relieved. I feel like a coward who got lucky. Ethan set down the socket wrench. She's 10 years younger than me, Ray. So she's got a whole life. And you've got, what, a headstone and a hobby? Ray's voice went hard in a way it almost never did. You're 39 years old. You are not finished. You have decided you're finished, because deciding you're finished is easier than the alternative. And the alternative is, you might love somebody again, and something might happen to her, and then you'd have to survive it twice. He stood up, wincing. I've known you 11 years, son. That's not humility. That's a bunker. He got to the door and stopped. For what it's worth, Ray said. She hasn't been sitting on her porch this week either. Thursday night. Emma came into the garage at 9 o'clock in her pajamas. Ethan was standing over the bench with a lamp in pieces in front of him. It wasn't his lamp. It was Marlene Prine's. It had been in his garage for 6 weeks. Dad, you're supposed to be in bed. I know. She climbed up on the stool anyway and put her elbows on the bench and looked at the lamp. Whose is that? Mrs. Prine's. Is it broken? It was. Emma nodded. She watched him thread the wire through the base. Then she said in the flat, devastating way that only an 8-year-old can say a thing. Dad, why do you always fix everybody's stuff except your own? Ethan's hands stopped. The garage was very quiet. Out on Pinewood a car went by. Somewhere down the block, a screen door banged. What do you mean? He said. Like the sink. Emma pointed vaguely toward the house. The sink in the little bathroom's been dripping since my birthday, and you fixed Mr. Dominguez's whole garage door. And the step by the back porch is still wobbly, and you built Miss Lily's the thing, the raised bed thing. The planter box. The planter box, and it's perfect, and our step is still wobbly. She shrugged. It's just weird. Ethan looked down at the lamp in his hands. You want to know the truth? He said. Yes, because when I fix somebody else's thing, they say thank you, and I go home. He turned the base over. And when I fix our stuff, I have to be in the house. Emma frowned at him. That doesn't make sense. No, Ethan said. It really doesn't. She was quiet a second. Then, is Miss Lily coming Saturday? I don't know, Em. Did you ask her? No. Why not? And Ethan Walker, a man who had gotten under a stranger's truck at 6:40 in the morning without being asked, a man who had driven 90 minutes in a blizzard to tow Marlene Prine's Buick out of a ditch, a man the entire street called. When something broke, stood in his own garage, and could not come up with a single answer that wasn't cowardice wearing a work shirt. I don't know, he said. Emma slid off the stool. At the door to the house she stopped and looked back at him, and Ethan saw his wife's face on his daughter for one clean second, and heard in his head, in a voice he had not been able to summon in 11 years, the exact tone Sarah used to use when he was being stubborn about something obvious. You should ask her, Emma said. That's all. You should just ask her. Then she went to bed. And Ethan stood alone in the garage with a stranger's lamp in his hands, and the wobbly step 12 feet away. And for the first time since the year he buried his wife, he set the lamp down without finishing it. Friday morning, 6:40. 12 days left, though. Ethan Walker did not know there was a clock running, and would not know for another 9 of them. He walked down Pinewood with 2 cups of gas station coffee and a speech he had rehearsed in the shower, and Lily Carter's truck was not in her driveway. He stood there like an idiot with the coffee going cold in both hands. She's not home. Marlene Prine was on her porch in a housecoat at 6:40 in the morning, because Marlene Prine was on her porch at all hours and had been for 19 years. Morning, Marlene. She left at 5:30. Woke me up. That truck of hers sounds like a coffee grinder full of nickels. You know where she went? I know where she's been going every day this week. Marlene took a sip of something. The old rec center on 4th, the one the county condemned. She's been over there since Monday with a crowbar. Ethan turned to go. Ethan Walker. He stopped. That was a hell of a thing you said Saturday. I know it. I've been eating that woman's cooking since October. Marlene set her cup down. She cuts my meat for me. She's never once said the word arthritis out loud, so I don't have to be embarrassed about it. And I stood in that yard and I laughed with everybody else. Her mouth got tight. I've been up nights about it too, if it makes you feel any better. It doesn't. No, Marlene said. It shouldn't. At 7:15, he pulled into the gravel lot on 4th Street, and there was her truck, and there was Lily on a stepladder with a pry bar, working a sheet of plywood off a window frame, and she saw him get out of the car and did not stop working. "Morning," he said. "Morning. I brought you coffee. It's an hour old." "Then it's my kind of coffee." She came down the ladder, took the cup, drank some, made a face. "That is genuinely terrible." "I know." "Why'd you buy it?" "Because I was standing in your driveway at 6:40 and I needed something to hold." Lily looked at him over the rim of the cup for about 3 seconds. "Grab the other pry bar," she said. "It's in the truck bed." And that was it. That was the whole reconciliation, and Ethan understood that he had been let off easy, and also that he had not been let off at all. That this was a woman handing him a tool instead of a verdict, and he took it and got to work and didn't say another word for 20 minutes. By 8 o'clock, they had 4 windows uncovered. "What is this place?" he finally asked. "Rec Center. Closed in 2016. Roof leaked, county ran out of money, they boarded it and forgot about it." She hauled a sheet of plywood toward the dumpster. "There's a room in the back that used to be a wood shop. Full bench, dust collector, everything. All still in there, rotting." "Who's paying you to do this?" "Nobody." "Lily." "Ethan." She dropped the plywood. "You want to have the conversation?" "Let's have the conversation." "Yes." "Nobody is paying me." "Yes, I have 4 paying clients and I'm here." "Yes. This is exactly the thing you made a joke about in front of 11 people. And yes, I'm still doing it because I would rather be a person who does this than a person who doesn't." "That's not what I'm not finished." She pushed her hair off her forehead. "I put a proposal in front of the county board in April. Volunteer restoration, they cover materials. You know what the woman said to me? She said, 'That's very ambitious for a small operation.' And she smiled at me. And she meant, 'Look at you.'" Lily picked the plywood back up. "So I'm going to open it. And when it opens, that woman is going to have to stand in it." Ethan stood there with a pry bar in his hand. "How's the roof?" he said. "The roof is a disaster." "I've done roofs." Lily stopped. "Ethan, I've got a shop that closes at 5, and a kid who's at her grandmother's every other weekend and 11 years of Saturdays I've spent doing absolutely nothing that mattered." He set the pry bar down on the step. "How's the roof?" She didn't answer for a moment. "It's a disaster," she said again, softer. "Okay." By Sunday, there were 4 of them. By Tuesday, there were 9. That was the part nobody could explain afterward, including Ray Dominguez, who showed up Sunday afternoon with 2 bad knees and a nail gun and stayed until dark. The word got around Pinewood the way words do. Marlene told the Hendersons told the family on the corner. Somebody put it on the neighborhood page. And by the middle of the week, there were people in that building who had driven past it, boarded up for 8 years without once slowing down. Wednesday evening, 6 o'clock. 9 days left. "You know what's funny?" Ray said, sitting on an overturned bucket watching Lily direct traffic across the main room. 6 months ago, I couldn't have picked that girl out of a lineup. She's lived 4 houses down from you since October. I know it." Ray shook his head. "I'd wave. That's the truth of it, Ethan. I'd wave and I'd think that's the gal with the truck. 8 months. And now I'm 62 years old sitting on a bucket doing what she tells me, and I'm happy about it. She's good at it." "She's not good at it. She's good at people." Ray pointed with his chin. "Watch. Watch what she does with the Henderson boy." The Henderson kid was 17, 6'2", and had been standing near the door for 40 minutes with his hands in his pockets, doing absolutely nothing, because his mother had made him come. Lily walked over. Ethan couldn't hear what she said. He watched the kid shrug. Watched her say something else. Watched the kid shrug again, and then slowly take his hands out of his pockets. 10 minutes later, the Henderson boy was up a ladder running conduit and explaining something to 2 adults loudly with his hands. "What did she say to him?" Ethan said. "Go ask her." He went and asked her. "I asked him what he was good at," Lily said. "That's it. That's it. Nobody had asked him in a while." She hooked a chalk line over a nail. "That's most of it, Ethan. Most people are standing around with their hands in their pockets waiting for somebody to ask. Thursday, 8 days left at about 9 at night when the building had emptied out and it was just the two of them coiling extension cords. Ethan finally said it. "You never answered me." "About what?" "In Ray's kitchen. I asked you what you meant and you told me I didn't want to know and then you walked out." Lily kept coiling. "You want to do this here? I want to do it somewhere." "Okay." She set the cord down. "Then here's my answer. I've had this conversation 4 times in my adult life. 4. And every single one of them ends the same way, and I can tell you the shape of it before it happens, because it has a shape." "Lily, there's a man," she said. "And he's nice. That's important. They're always nice. The mean ones don't get this far. And he likes talking to me, and he likes that I'm funny, and he likes that I notice things, and for a while, he's honestly a little bit in love with me, and he doesn't even know it yet." She was very steady. "And then somebody sees us, and he does this thing with his face. It's about a quarter of a second, and I watch a man do math in front of me." "What math?" "The math where he's imagining introducing me to his brother." Lily picked the cord back up. "His name was Marcus, Fort Collins. 14 months. 14 months Ethan and I never met one friend of his. Not one. There was always a reason, and every reason was reasonable, and I believed every single one of them, because the alternative was believing I was somebody's private thing." Ethan's jaw was so tight it hurt. "How'd it end?" "His sister got married, and he took a woman named Erin." She said the name without any weight at all, which was worse. "I found out on the internet like a stranger. And you know what I felt? I wasn't even surprised. That's the part I'm still mad about. 14 months and my first honest feeling was, oh right." "Lily, so when you ask me what I meant..." She hung the coiled cord on her shoulder. "I meant that on Saturday, I was standing in a yard where I had cut an old woman's meat and fixed a kid's toy and hauled my own table over, and the one person there who has never once made me feel like a project made a joke about me dying alone, and it went through me like a nail, and I decided in about half a second that I was done being polite about it." She headed for the door. "Was that all it was?" She stopped with her hand on the frame. "No," she said. And she left. Saturday. 6 days left. The volcano. Emma Walker had a science fair project due Monday, and she had been talking about it for 11 days, and at 9 in the morning, Lily Carter's truck pulled into the driveway, and Emma hit the front door at a dead run. "You came." "I said I would." "Dad said he didn't know if you would." "Your dad," Lily said, worries. They built the volcano on the picnic table. Ethan stayed out of it. He sat on the wobbly back step with a coffee and listened to his daughter run her mouth for 2 straight hours, and it occurred to him somewhere around the 2nd hour that Emma had not talked like that in front of another woman since the funeral. At noon, Emma said without looking up from the plaster, "Miss Lily, are you staying for lunch?" "I've got because Dad makes the grilled cheese with the tomato in it, and it's really good, and he only makes it when somebody's here." There was a small pause. "Is that right?" Lily said. "He makes cereal when it's just us," Emma said. "For dinner, 2 times. "Emma," Ethan said. 4 times. Lily started laughing and could not stop, and Emma was delighted with herself, and Ethan sat on his wobbly step with his ears burning and thought that he could not remember the last time there had been that much noise in his backyard. She stayed for lunch. She stayed until 4. At 3:15, Emma asked her the question. "Miss Lily, did you know my mom?" Ethan's whole body went still. "No, honey. I moved here after." "Oh." Emma poked at the plaster. "Dad doesn't like talking about her." "That's not true," Ethan said. That's not. You don't." Emma didn't say it meanly. She said it the way you report the weather. "When I ask about her, you say a thing, and then you go do a chore." The backyard got very quiet. Lily set down the spatula. "Emma," she said, "can I tell you something my mom told me?" "Okay." "My mom lost her sister when I was about your age, and I asked her one time why she never talked about her." Lily wiped her hands. "And she said, because talking about her makes her real again for about a minute, and then the minute ends. She said the minute was worth it. She said she just wasn't strong enough for the part after." Emma thought about that. That's sad. It is. Dad, is that why? Ethan Walker sat on his back step and could not speak for 4 seconds. Yeah, he said. That's why, Em. Okay. Emma went back to her volcano, and then casually into the plaster. You could tell me anyway. I'd be okay after the minute ended. I'm pretty tough. And Ethan put his hand over his eyes. Later at the sink with Emma gone inside and the light going, Lily said quietly, I'm sorry. I stepped into something. You didn't. I did. That's not mine to be in the middle of. Lily. He shut the water off. She's asked me about her mother maybe 6 times in 3 years, and I have gotten up and left the room every single time. Every single time. And in one afternoon you got her to say, I'm pretty tough out loud. He put the dish down. Don't apologize to me. Please don't do that. She looked at him, and Ethan looked back, and there was about 8 inches between them, and neither one of them moved, and there was a moment maybe 2 seconds long where the entire next 20 years of both their lives balanced on a countertop in a kitchen with a leaking faucet. Then the screen door banged, and Emma yelled that the volcano was leaking real lava, which turned out to be dish soap, and the moment closed like a hand. Tuesday. 4 days left. He found the envelope on Tuesday. How was cleaning out her truck bed for her. She'd asked him to look at a whine in the rear differential, and he'd hauled everything out onto the driveway, and there was a manila envelope wedged behind the toolbox, soft at the corners, from being handled a lot, and it was face up, and he read the return address without meaning to. Cedar Ridge Development Group, Kansas City, Missouri. He was still holding it when she came out of the house. Lily saw it. He watched her see it. That's mine, she said. I know. I was clearing the bed. Give it here. He gave it to her. She took it inside. She was gone maybe 90 seconds, and when she came back, her face was completely normal, and Ethan stood there with a socket wrench in his hand and felt the floor of the last 3 weeks tilt about 2 degrees. What's in Kansas City? He said. Work. What kind of work? Ethan. She smiled. You want to look at this differential or not? And he let it go. He would think about that later for a long time, that he had a manila envelope in his own hands, and he set it down because asking would have meant hearing, and Ethan Walker had spent 11 years being extremely good at not hearing things. Thursday. 2 days left, and it all came apart in about 11 minutes. Diane Kessler arrived at 4:40 on Thursday afternoon to pick up Emma for the weekend, the same as she had done every other Thursday for 3 years. She was 68. She was Sarah's mother. She had been in every practical way the reason Ethan survived the first year, and he owed her more than he could say out loud, and she knew it, and both of them had built a very careful life around never mentioning it. She pulled in behind Lily's truck. She got out and looked at the truck for a moment before she looked at the house. Ethan. Diane. Emma's grabbing her bag. Whose truck? That's Lily's. She's a friend. She's been helping with the rec center on 4th. Diane's face did not change at all, which Ethan should have recognized as weather. The one you've been at every night. It's a community project. I'm sure it is. And then Lily came around the side of the house with a roll of landscape fabric under her arm and stopped, and Emma came out the front door at the same time and yelled, Grandma! And for about 40 seconds, it was all completely fine. Diane, this is Lily Carter. Lily, Sarah's mother. Hi. Lily put out her hand. It's good to meet you. Diane shook it. You're the gardener. Landscape designer, but I'll answer to gardener. Emma's mentioned you. Diane's smile was perfectly pleasant. Quite a lot, actually. Every phone call for about a month. She's a great kid. She is. She's a wonderful kid who lost her mother at 5. Still pleasant, still smiling. So we're all very careful with her. The driveway went silent. Emma, 8 years old, standing between all 3 of them with a backpack, said, Grandma, Miss Lily helped me with my volcano and I got an A. Did you? Diane said. That's lovely. Go on and get in the car, sweetheart. Emma went, and Diane Kessler turned to Ethan Walker and said in a voice like a woman discussing a fence line, Sarah's roses are gone. Ethan felt his stomach drop. They were dead, Diane. Half of them. They were dead. I let them go for 6 years, and they were dead, and I asked her to. You don't have to explain yourself to me. Diane picked up her purse. You really don't. It's your yard. I only mention it because Emma called me in April and said, Grandma, we took out Mom's flowers, and I had to sit down on my kitchen floor. But you go on and do what you need to do. You've earned it. Nobody moved. And here was the moment, and Ethan knew it was the moment, even while it was happening, which was the thing he could never forgive himself for afterward. There was a sentence sitting right there in his mouth, fully formed. Diane, that's not fair to her. She's standing right here. Say it to me if you're going to say it. He said nothing. He stood in his own driveway and looked at the concrete and said absolutely nothing for about 6 seconds, while a 68-year-old woman got in her car and backed out, and Emma waved through the glass. Then he turned around. Lily was still holding the roll of landscape fabric. Lily. Don't. She's Diane's been through, you have to understand what she's... I do understand. Lily's voice was completely level, and that was how he knew. That's the awful part, Ethan. I understand her perfectly. She lost her daughter, and she's watching a stranger stand in her daughter's yard, and she is doing exactly what a wrecked person does. She rolled the fabric tighter under her arm. I don't have one single thing against that woman. Not one. Then, it's not her. Lily looked up. It's the 6 seconds. Lily. 6 seconds, Ethan. I counted. I have been counting 6 seconds my whole life. She started toward her truck. I got called a name in a Kroger parking lot when I was 16 and my father was standing right there, and he waited 6 seconds, and then he said, let's just go, Lil. Marcus's brother made a joke at a barbecue, and Marcus laughed, and I told myself that laugh was 6 seconds of nothing. She opened the truck door. It's never nothing. It's the whole thing. Everything anybody actually believes about me happens in those 6 seconds. That's not what that was. Then what was it? And Ethan Walker, who could diagnose a failing bearing by sound through a closed hood, stood in his driveway and could not produce a single true sentence. I don't know, he said. Yeah. Lily got in. I know. She backed out. She did not slam anything. She did not cry. She lifted 2 fingers off the wheel, the way you do to a neighbor, which was somehow the cruelest thing that had ever been done to him, and she drove down Pinewood and turned right. He did not sleep Thursday night, and on Friday morning, he did what he had done for 11 years, which was the only thing he knew how to do, which was to get very, very busy. He opened the shop at 5:30. He took a walk-in he'd normally have turned away. He stayed past 8. Saturday, he told Ray he couldn't make it to 4th Street, and Ray said, uh-huh, in a voice like a dropped tool. Sunday, he cleaned the whole shop, every bay, the parts room, the bathroom. Nobody used, and drove home at 10 at night, past a rec center with every window lit and 9 cars in the lot. Monday. Lily texted him at 11 in the morning. You okay? He looked at it for 6 minutes. He wrote back at 4:40 in the afternoon. Slammed at work. Talk soon. He watched the little dots come up. He watched them stop. They never came back. And Tuesday, Ray Dominguez walked into the shop at 10 in the morning and stood in the bay with his hands in his pockets and didn't say a word until Ethan finally looked up. What? You get busy, Ray said. Don't. I told you a story about my own life, son. I sat on that stool and I told you the most embarrassing thing about me, and you nodded, and then you went out and did the exact same thing, but worse, because Denise at least knew I was a coward. She could see me on her lawn every week. Ray shook his head. That woman doesn't even get that. She gets slammed at work. Ray, you don't know what happened. Then tell me. And Ethan told him. All of it. Diane, the roses, the 6 seconds. And when he finished, Ray was quiet for a while. So you froze, Ray said. Yeah. All right. Men freeze. Ray leaned on the fender. That's forgivable. That is 100% forgivable, and any grown person on earth would forgive it. Freezing isn't the problem, Ethan. Then what is? You froze on Thursday, Ray said. It's Tuesday. Ethan didn't answer. That's 5 days. That's not a freeze anymore. That's a decision. Ray straightened up. You want to know what I think? I think you were relieved. I think somewhere down under it all when Diane said that some part of you went thank God. Now I've got a reason. Get out of my shop. Yeah, Ray said. I figured. He got to the door and stopped because he always did. She hasn't been at 4th Street since Friday, he said. Nobody's seen her. Henderson kid's been running the crew. Ethan's head came up. What? But Ray was already gone. He drove down Pinewood that night at 9:15. He told himself he was just driving home. He had driven home the same way 4,000 times, and he had never once slowed down in front of the little gray house with the black-eyed Susans out front. He slowed down. The porch light was off. The truck wasn't there. And in the front window, where there had been a lamp on every single night since October, there was nothing at all, and taped to the inside of the glass facing out was a white sheet of paper he couldn't read from the street. Ethan Walker sat in his car in the middle of the road with the engine running for a long time. Then he put it in park and got out and walked up the path. The paper in the window was a leasing flyer. That was all. A single sheet from a property management company in Aurora, printed crooked with a phone number in bold at the bottom, and a line that said, Available August 1st pets negotiable. Ethan Walker stood on that porch at 9:20 on a Tuesday night and read it 4 times the way a man reads a diagnosis. She took the plants. Marlene Prine was on her own porch 2 houses down in the dark, and Ethan had not seen her. When? He said. Friday afternoon. Marlene's voice came across the lawn flat and tired. A 20-foot truck, 2 boys from a moving company. She dug up the black-eyed Susans out front and put them in a bucket and took them with her, and she stood right there for a minute looking at the hole. Friday, Ethan, 4 days ago. Marlene let that sit. I brought her a sandwich. She said thank you. She said tell everybody thank you. Did she say where? She didn't say anything. That woman has never once told anybody on this street a single thing about herself, and I only just realized it Friday standing in the road holding a plate. He called the number on the flyer at 7 the next morning from the parking lot of his own shop before he unlocked the doors because he had not slept and there was nothing else to do with his hands. A woman named Renata answered. Pinewood the gray one, she said. Yeah, it's available August 1st. You want to see it? I want to know when the tenant gave notice. I can't give out tenant information, sir. I'm not asking for her information. I'm asking for a date. There was typing. I mean the notice dates on the listing history. It's not private. More typing. June 11th. Ethan sat very still. Say that again. June 11th. She paid the break fee same day. 90 days of rent, which I'll be honest with you, most people fight me about. Renata sounded almost admiring. She didn't fight me about anything. June 11th. That's what I've got. He hung up and sat in his truck in front of his own shop with the keys in his hand and did the arithmetic 3 times to be sure. Ray Dominguez's birthday had been June 13th. She had given notice on her house 2 days before she stood in that yard and looked up at him and said, Maybe you're why. He got to 4th Street at 8 in the morning, and there were 6 cars in the lot, and the Henderson boy was up on a ladder with a level calling out numbers to Ray, and the whole building had a rhythm to it that Ethan had not been part of in 5 days. Ray saw him and did not come down off the bucket he was sitting on. The Henderson kid did. Mr. Walker. Danny. She left me a list. The kid had a folded page in his back pocket, soft from being carried. She left everybody a list. She was here Thursday night till 1 in the morning writing them out. Thursday night. Yes, sir. I came back for my phone, and she was sitting on the floor in the wood shop with about 9 pieces of paper. Ethan held out his hand. Danny gave him the page. It was a punch list. 11 items numbered in a handwriting Ethan had seen on plant tags and shopping receipts, and once on a paper towel, where she'd sketched a drainage plan for his backyard. And at the top of the page underlined was his name. Rear gutter, north side pitch, is wrong, needs redone. Woodshop dust collector, motor turns bearing is shot, you'll hear it. Back door strike plate. Ceiling fan in the main room, wobble probably a blade weight. And on down. 11 things. 11 things that a woman had written out at 1 in the morning on the same night she stood in his driveway and got in her truck. She said you'd know what all that meant, Danny said. She said, quote, "He'll know, don't let him tell you he doesn't." Ethan folded the page along the crease she'd made in it. Did she say anything else? She said thanks. The kid shifted. And she said if the county lady gives us a hard time on the walkthrough, tell her the drawings are stamped and the permit number's on the door. What walkthrough? Thursday, 8 in the morning. Danny looked at him. You didn't know. Ray finally came over at 9 walking slow and stood there with his thumbs in his belt loops and didn't say anything for a while, and when he did say something, it was not what Ethan expected. You want the rest of it? The rest of what? There's a piece you don't have. Ray rubbed his jaw. I've been chewing on whether to tell you since Friday, and I've decided I'm going to, and I want you to know before I open my mouth that you're not going to like me for about a month. Ray? May 14th, Ray said. You remember May 14th? No. No, Ray said. I know you don't. That's the whole point. He sat down on the tailgate of Ethan's truck carefully the way he did everything now. Denise made a roast. We had you and the girl over, and we had Lily over, and we did that on purpose, and I want to be a man about it and admit that. Denise cooked. I made the phone calls, and the two of us sat in our kitchen that afternoon, like a pair of matchmaking old fools, and we were pleased with ourselves. Ethan felt something starting to move under the floor of his memory. And Denise said something at the table, Ray went on. She said, isn't it nice? And she looked at the two of you. And Frank Delgado, who has never in 60 years had a thought he didn't say out loud, said, so are you two together or what? Ethan closed his eyes. And you laughed, Ray said. You laughed and you said, quote, it's not like that. We're just neighbors. She's got a business to run. The lot was very quiet. You said it like it was a kindness, Ray said. I remember thinking that at the time. You said it fast to get her off the hook because you thought she was embarrassed. That's the kind of thing you do. You take the bullet for people, and then you go home, and you sleep fine. She didn't say anything. She said that's right, and she passed the potatoes. Ray shook his head slowly. And then she got up about 10 minutes later and helped Denise with the dishes, and she stood at my sink for 25 minutes, and my wife told me afterward, she never said one word the whole time. Denise said Ray, that girl washed the same pan twice. Ethan put both hands on the side of his truck. May 14th, Ray said. She gave notice on her house June 11th. You want to sit with those two dates for a minute? Go ahead. I've been sitting with them since Friday. Ray, I'm not finished, and then I'll shut up about it forever. Ray stood. You didn't do anything cruel. You want me to say that, so I'm saying it. You did the thing every decent scared man in America does. You gave her an out you thought she wanted, and you handed her the exact sentence she has heard from every man she's ever cared about, and the worst part, the part I would not be able to live with, is you don't even remember doing it. He walked back toward the building. Ray stopped. Why'd she stay? Ethan's voice came out wrong. If she signed the papers on the 11th, why'd she stay all month? Why'd she come do the volcano? You know, Ray said, I asked myself that too. And then I thought about it, and I got mad at you all over again. He turned around. She stayed for the building, and she stayed for that little girl. She didn't stay for you, Ethan. She stayed because she doesn't know how to leave anything half done, and you are the only thing in this entire town she was willing to walk away from unfinished. At 4:30 on Wednesday afternoon, he drove out to Diane Kessler's house in Arvada to pick up his daughter 3 days early. And he did not call ahead because he had decided somewhere around Iowa Avenue that if he called ahead, he would talk himself out of it. Diane opened the door with a dish towel in her hand. Emma's at the pool with the Novak girl. I know, I came to talk to you. Diane looked at him for a second and then stepped back from the door. They sat at her kitchen table, which had 4 chairs and had always had 4 chairs, and Ethan had sat at that table maybe 200 times. And had never once sat in the one by the window. Say what you came to say, Diane said. She's gone. I heard. You heard. Emma told me Sunday. She cried for about an hour, and then she asked me if it was my fault. Diane folded the towel. Which I'll have you know is a question I would not wish on anybody at 68 years old. Diane, I said terrible things in your driveway. You said them to her, not to me. Yes. Diane's chin came up. I did. I stood in front of a woman I had known for 4 minutes, and I brought up my dead daughter's roses to make her feel like a thief, and I have not had a decent night's sleep since, and I would like to tell you it came out wrong, but it did not come out wrong. It came out exactly the way I meant it. Ethan stared at her. Why? Because I am terrified, Diane said, and she put the towel down, and her hands were shaking, and Ethan Walker watched a woman he had known for 18 years come apart at her own kitchen table. Because Emma calls me every Wednesday, and for a month it was Miss Lily. This Miss Lily, that Miss Lily says, and one night she said, Grandma, Miss Lily makes Dad laugh weird. Diane pressed her fingers under her eyes. Laugh weird. Do you know what that means? That means my granddaughter has never heard you laugh right. She was 5. She doesn't remember. And some woman I've never met walks into your backyard, and Emma finds out her father has a laugh. That's a good thing. Of course it's a good thing. Diane's voice cracked straight down the middle. That's why I'm terrified. Because every good thing that happens in that house from here on out is a thing my daughter isn't in. And I've got 11 photo albums and a granddaughter who's going to stop needing me. And I am not proud of 1 second of Thursday, but I want you to understand what I was standing in. Ethan couldn't say anything. There's something else, Diane said. She got up and went to the hutch in the dining room and came back with a card. It was small, and the envelope was worn thin along the top edge, and it had been opened and closed 1,000 times. Sarah wrote this in the hospital. Diane, I don't want to. It's not to you. That's why I'm giving it to you. She held it out until he took it. It's to me. She wrote 3 of them. One for Emma, which Emma gets when she's 16, and one for you, which you already have, and one for me, which I have never shown to a living soul. Diane, read the last line. He opened it. The handwriting was bad. That was the first thing. Sarah had beautiful handwriting, and this was not it, and Ethan had to hold the card at an angle to make the words come apart from each other. He read the last line twice. Mom, don't let him turn it into a shrine. He will if you let him. Make him get up. He set the card on the table very carefully, the way you set down something that might go off. 11 years, Diane said. I've had that in a drawer for 11 years, and I have done the exact opposite of what my daughter asked me to do every single day, and I told myself I was protecting her memory. She sat back down. I wasn't. I was protecting myself. And on Thursday, I did it out loud in your driveway to a woman who did nothing to me but shake my hand. Ethan's throat closed. I froze, he said. Diane, I stood there and I said nothing. I know you did. 6 seconds. She counted them. Then she's smarter than both of us. Diane picked up the card and put it back in the envelope. Ethan, look at me. I've been carrying that woman's last instruction for 11 years, and I finally handed it to somebody, and it took me 1 hour of shaking hands to do it. You've got until Thursday morning. He looked up. How do you know about Thursday? Because your daughter told me about a walkthrough at 8 a.m. on Thursday 4 separate times in one phone call, Diane said, and I have been sitting here for 2 days waiting for you to come out here and ask me for the car keys. Emma came home at 6. She saw his truck in the driveway from half a block away, and she did not run. That was the thing that took the legs out from under him. Emma Walker had run at every truck he had ever parked anywhere, and she walked up that driveway at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday, like a woman going into a meeting. You said you'd fix it, she said. In the car, after the barbecue. You turned around and you said that one's on me, I'm going to fix it. Her arms were folded, and her voice was steady, and she was 8 years old. And then she left. I know. Everybody keeps saying stuff to me. Grandma says grown-ups are complicated. Mrs. Prine gave me a cookie. Her eyes were shining, and she was furious about it. Nobody will just say the actual thing. Okay, Ethan said. Then I'll say the actual thing. He sat down on the step so he wasn't above her. I got scared and I made her feel like she didn't matter to me. Not once. 3 or 4 times over about 2 months. And she waited, and she was patient about it longer than she should have been. And last Thursday, I let somebody be unkind to her while I stood there and looked at the ground. He held her eyes. It's not complicated, Em. I did it. That's the actual thing. Emma's face crumpled and came back together. Why? Because I have been scared for a long time. Of what? Of being happy, he said, and then having it taken. Emma thought about it for a long moment. Then she sat down on the step next to him hard, the way kids sit. That's dumb, she said. Yeah. That's really dumb, Dad. I know it is. So go get her. It might be too late. Then say sorry anyway, Emma said, and let her be the one who says no. You don't get to say no for her, that's not how it works. That's not even fair. Ethan turned and looked at his daughter, and out of nowhere, out of 11 years of nothing, he heard Sarah's voice so clearly that his eyes stung. Where'd you learn that? He said. You told me that, Emma said, when I didn't want to try out for science team. He got to 4th Street on Thursday morning at 6:15. Her truck was not there. He sat in the lot in the dark and waited, and at 10 minutes to 7, a pair of headlights came up the road and turned in, and the engine that shut off had a whine in the rear differential that he had told her about 2 weeks ago and she had not fixed. Lily got out. She saw his truck. She stopped for about a second and then kept walking toward the door with a roll of drawings under her arm. Lily. The county's here at 8. I know. So we have 45 minutes, and I'd rather use them on the punch list. You gave notice on your house June 11th. She stopped with the key in the lock. She did not turn around. Renata, she said. That woman would tell a stranger my blood type. 2 days, Ethan said. 2 days before you stood in Ray's yard and said what you said. That's right. Why? She turned around then, and her face was not angry, and it was not sad. And it was something Ethan had never seen on her in 9 months, which was tired all the way to the bone. Because I was leaving, she said. That's the answer. That's the whole answer, and you're not going to like it. And I've been dreading you finding out because you're going to make it romantic, and it is not romantic. Say it anyway. I said it because it was free. Her voice shook for the first time. Because I had already signed, and the truck was already coming, and I was going to be 900 miles from that yard by the middle of July. And so for one time in my entire life, I got to open my mouth and say a true thing to a man's face without having to survive the answer. Ethan felt like the ground had moved. That's not brave, Ethan. That's the opposite. She wiped her face fast with the back of her wrist, angry at it. Brave would have been May. Brave would have been telling you in your backyard in March. I set it on a countdown clock. I set it because I had an exit. Lily, and you want to know what actually broke me, she said. It's not that you froze in the driveway. I've watched a lot of men freeze. It's that you didn't. For about 3 weeks you didn't freeze at all. You showed up at that rec center at 7 in the morning with terrible coffee. You got on that roof. You made grilled cheese with tomato in it. Her mouth twisted. And I sat in my truck in June with a signed contract in a manila envelope, and I thought, oh no, he's actually going to make me want to stay. Then stay. Don't. Lily, stay. Don't you do that. She pointed at him, and her hand was shaking. Do not stand in a parking lot at 7 in the morning and ask me to throw out the only thing I've built that nobody can take away from me because you finally got around to it on a Thursday. That's not what I'm asking. It's exactly what you're asking. It's what everybody asks. Her voice broke wide open. Marcus asked me to move to Fort Collins. My mother asked me to stay in Pueblo. My whole life is people asking me to be conveniently located. And the one man who never asked me for anything just did it in a gravel lot. Ethan said, You're right. She stopped. You're right, he said again. That was wrong, and I'm taking it back. Every word of it. At 8 o'clock, a county car pulled in, and a woman named Vance got out with a clipboard, and behind her came a man from the building department. And Lily met them at the door with her drawings under her arm, and her voice absolutely level, and Ethan Walker followed them inside and did not say one word for 40 minutes. They walked the main room. They walked the corridor. Vance made a note about egress, and a note about the panel, and a note about the ramp, and Lily answered every one of them with a permit number and a page. And the man from the building department started nodding about halfway through. The way a man nods when he's realized the person he's inspecting knows more than he does. And then, at the door of the woodshop, Vance looked at the room and looked at Lily and said pleasantly, "The way you say a thing that costs you nothing. You know, honestly, I did not expect this much out of you." Lily's face didn't move. She had a whole lifetime of not moving her face. Ethan Walker said into a room with 4 people in it, and no delay at all. "Ma'am, what exactly did you expect?" Vance turned. "Excuse me, I'm asking a straight question." His voice was calm, which surprised him. "You put that ad in front of her in April, and you told her it was ambitious for a small operation. She's had 19 volunteers through that door, and she brought this building back in 6 weeks with no county money. So I'd like to know what you expected, because I think you and I both know the answer, and I'd rather you say it out loud in front of everybody than smile it at her." The room did not move. Vance's neck went red. "I meant it as a compliment." "I know you did," Ethan said. "That's the part I'd think about." The man from the building department looked at the floor and very carefully wrote nothing. Vance signed the sheet at 8:40. She left without shaking anybody's hand. And when the county car was out of the lot, Lily Carter stood in the middle of the room she had spent 6 weeks rebuilding and put both hands over her face. "You couldn't have done that," she said 3 weeks ago. "No." 6 seconds. She dropped her hands. Her eyes were red and she was laughing sort of, and it was awful. "You did it in 0, not 1 second. You were right there." Lily. "And I need you to hear me, because I'm only going to be able to say this once, and then I'm going to get in that truck." She took a breath that went in crooked. "That was the best thing anybody has ever done for me, and it does not fix 5 days. Ethan felt his chest go hollow. "I texted you," she said. "You okay?" 2 words. That's all I had left in the tank, and it took me 2 hours to send it. And you looked at it for most of a day, and you sent me back the words that every woman in America knows by heart. Slammed at work." She shook her head. "Talk soon." "I know. And I sat on my floor Friday morning with a moving truck outside, and I thought, all right, Lily. He's a good man, and he's a coward about exactly one thing, and it happens to be you. That's fair." "I don't want it to be fair," she shouted, and it echoed off the block walls, and it was the first time in 9 months Ethan had heard her raise her voice at anybody. "I want it to be wrong. I have been waiting for somebody to make me wrong about this my entire adult life." Nobody said anything for a while. "Where are you staying?" he said finally. "Extended stay off Colfax, since Friday." "You've been 40 minutes away for 6 days." "Yes." "Lily, the truck goes Saturday morning," she said. "The furniture's already in Kansas City. I've got a walkthrough on an apartment Sunday, and I start on the 4th of August, and I signed the thing, Ethan. I signed it, and I took their money, and it is a very good job, and I am not going to sit here and pretend I don't want it because I do. I want it a lot." "I know you do." "Then don't ask me to stay." She picked her drawings up off the bench. "Ask me something better or don't ask me anything." And she walked out the door and got in her truck. And this time, she did not lift 2 fingers off the wheel. She did not look at him at all. And the differential whined all the way down 4th Street until he couldn't hear it anymore. He got home at 9:10. Emma was sitting on the front step with an envelope in her lap. "It was in the mailbox," she said. Her name was on the front. Just her name. Emma in that handwriting, and nothing else. No stamp, no address, which meant somebody had driven down Pinewood and put it there by hand. "Are you going to read it?" Ethan said. "I already did." She held it out to him, and he did not take it. "It's not mine, Em. She wrote about you in it." Ethan sat down on the step. "There's a part at the end," Emma said. "It says, 'Tell your dad the bench in the woodshop is his.' It says, 'Tell him I left the key in the drawer under it.'" Ethan closed his eyes. "Dad." "Yeah." "This is the 4th one," Emma said. He opened his eyes. "What?" "She wrote me before." Emma pulled her knees up. In March, when Dylan said the thing about science team. And in April. And on my birthday, and that one had a drawing in it. She looked straight ahead at the street at the dark house 4 doors down with a leasing flyer taped in the window. I've got them in my sock drawer. I never told you because you always go do a chore. Thursday night 9:12, and Ethan Walker did not get up off that step. That was the whole thing. He sat there with his elbows on his knees, and he did not go check the oil in the truck. He did not go put a load in the washer. He did not remember something he had to do in the garage. What? Go get them. Emma looked at him sideways. Get what? The other 3. He kept his eyes on the street. Out of your sock drawer. I want to hear all 4. You always? I know what I always do. His voice came out rough. I'm not going to do it tonight. I'm going to sit right here on this step, and I'm not going to move, and you can time me. Emma got up slowly like she was waiting for the trick and went inside. She came back with a rubber band around them. The March 1 was on a piece of graph paper folded in quarters, and Emma read it out loud in her school voice, and Ethan listened to a woman he had known 9 months talk to his daughter about a boy named Dylan. Emma, I heard about the science team. Here's what I know about people who tell other people what they can't do. Almost every single time they are just telling you what they couldn't do. It's not about you. It has never once in the history of the world been about you. Do the tryout. If you don't make it, do it again in the spring. Love, Lily. P.S. Ask your dad how many times he failed the ASE test before he passed it. Ask him in front of somebody. Emma looked up. How many times? 3, Ethan said. 3. 3rd time was the charm. You never told me that. No, he said. I didn't. The April one was shorter. Emma, you asked me why your dad gets quiet. I don't know for sure because I'm not in there with him, but I've noticed he gets quiet in exactly 2 places, the kitchen and the car. And I don't think that's random because those are the 2 places your mom would have been sitting. So when he goes quiet, he's not mad at you. He's just in a room with somebody who isn't there. Give him about 4 minutes. He always comes back. Ethan put his hand over his mouth. That's true, actually, Emma said, folding it. The car thing, that's so true. The birthday had a drawing in it, and Emma turned it around so he could see. It was the backyard. It was their backyard drawn in pencil, but it wasn't the way the backyard looked. There were trees in it that were 8 feet tall. She says that's what it's going to look like when I'm 13, Emma said. She says the little sticks by the fence are going to be over the roof. Service berries. She says they get white flowers and then birds come. Ethan took the drawing and looked at it for a long time. She had drawn a person on the back step. One person. Just the shape of a man sitting on a step with a cup, and it was not a good drawing of a person, and it was unmistakably him. Read the last one, he said. Emma hesitated for the first time. You don't have to. No, I want to. She smoothed it on her knee. Emma, I'm sorry I didn't say goodbye in person. That's a cowardly thing, and I'm not going to pretend it's anything else. You are one of the 4 or 5 best people I have ever met, and I've met a lot of people, so that's a real number, not a nice one. 3 things. 1. Do the science team again in the spring. 2. The service berries need water every day for the first summer, every day, even when it rains, I mean it. 3. She stopped. 3, Ethan said. 3. Ask your dad about your mom. Keep asking. He'll get better at it. He's a slow starter, but he finishes everything he starts, and you are allowed to be the one who makes him start. Emma's chin was going. And then the part about the bench, she said. And that's it. That's the whole thing. Ethan Walker sat on his back step with his 8-year-old daughter and 4 letters and did not move for a while. Her name was Sarah, he said. Emma's head came up so fast it was almost funny. She hummed, Ethan said. That's the thing I never tell you, and it's the thing I think about most, so I don't know why I don't tell you. She hummed, and she didn't know she was doing it. She'd be washing dishes and humming, and I'd say, "What song is that?" And she'd say, "What humming?" Every time. Like a bit. 15 years. What song was it? That's the thing. It wasn't a song, Em. It was never a song. I checked. You checked. I sat there and listened to see if I could catch it, he said. It was just noise she made because she was happy. And I could not stand it for about a year, and then one day I could not remember it, and that was 10 times worse. Emma leaned into his arm. Do you remember it now? Since about April, Ethan said. Since somebody was on her knees in the dirt 3 feet away from me not looking at me, and I said it out loud, and after that I could hear it again. Nobody said anything for a while. Dad. Yeah. That's the most you've ever said about her. I know it is. Okay. Emma wiped her face with the heel of her hand. Do more tomorrow. He put her to bed at 10, and then he stood in his own bedroom closet at 10:30 with a shoebox in his hands. Diane's card was in his jacket pocket, the one addressed to her. And in the shoebox under Sarah's watch, and a hospital bracelet, and a folded parking receipt he had never once thrown away, was an envelope with his name on it in bad handwriting. 11 years. He had never opened it. That was the thing he had never said to Diane, or to Ray, or to a grief counselor, or to anybody. Everyone assumed he had read it 100 times. Everybody assumed it was the reason he never moved on. And the truth, the actual truth was that Ethan Walker had carried an unopened envelope through 11 years and 2 houses and 100,000 miles, because as long as it was closed, she had not finished talking. He opened it at 10:40 on a Thursday night standing up because he did not trust himself to sit down. It was mostly nothing. That was what nobody tells you. It was a list. The fuse box, which panel was the well pump, that the label was wrong on number 6. That Emma's ear infections came with a low fever first, and to not wait on it. That the neighbor's insurance guy was a crook. 3/4 of a page of housekeeping in handwriting that fell downhill. And then, at the bottom, in a hand that had clearly taken a long time, Ethan. You're going to decide what people deserve. You did it with me for 15 years, and I let you because it was sweet. Don't do it to the next one. You'll look at her and decide she deserves better, and you'll call that being good. It isn't. It's just you leaving first. Let her decide, that's all. Let her be the one who decides. He sat down on the floor of his own closet at 10:45 at night and did not get up for 20 minutes. He called Ray Dominguez at 5:40 on Friday morning. Somebody dead. Ray. It's 5:40 in the morning, Ethan. I need everybody at 4th Street by 7. There was a pause on the line, and then the sound of a 62-year-old man sitting up in bed fast enough to hurt himself. Say more. There's 11 things on that list, and I want all 11 done by dark. The truck goes Saturday. I know when the truck goes. Son. Ray's voice changed. Is this a gesture? Because if this is a gesture, I'll be honest with you, I'm going to go back to sleep. That woman has had a lifetime of gestures. It's not a gesture. Then what is it? It's the list, Ethan said. She wrote it out at 1 in the morning on the worst night of her month, and she put my name on the top of it. It's not for her. She's not going to see it. She's going to be 900 miles away. He rubbed his eyes. It's just the list, Ray. Somebody's got to do the list. Another pause. I'll make the calls, Ray said. There were 14 people in that parking lot by 7:15. Marlene Prine came at 7:30 with 2 thermoses and a folding chair and announced that she was not able to do anything, that she was 79 years old and her hands were garbage, and that she intended to sit right there and tell people when they were doing it wrong. She did exactly that for 9 hours. She was right 4 times. Danny Henderson took the gutter. Frank Delgado, who had never in 60 years had a thought he didn't say out loud, said, "So we're doing this for the gardener." And Ray said, "We're doing it because it's on a list." And Frank said, "Well, fine," and went and got his ladder. At 9:10, Ethan pulled the motor on the dust collector and got the bearing out, and it came apart in his hands, powdered gone. How'd she know? Danny said. She heard it. She heard that. She stood next to it for about 4 seconds in June and said, "That's not right." Ethan set it on this bench. Everybody in this town thinks that woman is nice. Nobody ever noticed she's the most observant person on this street. At 11:40, the ceiling fan came down, and it wasn't a blade weight, it was a cracked mount, And Ray said that was the only thing on the list she'd gotten wrong. And Ethan said, no. She wrote probably go read it again, and Ray read it again, and said, well, I'll be damned, and went and sat down. At 2 o'clock, a car pulled into the lot that nobody recognized. It was a 15-year-old Buick with a bad clear coat, and Diane Kessler got out of it in gardening clothes with a 5-gallon bucket in both hands, and the entire parking lot went quiet in a way that Ethan felt on the back of his neck. Marlene Prine said out loud, "Oh hell. Diane. Where's the front of this building?" She was breathing hard from the bucket. "The south side. Where's the south side?" "Diane, what are you?" "It's a Duchess." She set the bucket down on the gravel. "It's off Sarah's Duchess, the one on the east fence. I took a cutting in 2016 because I was afraid you'd let it go, which for the record you did." Her chin was up and her eyes were wet, and her voice was absolutely steady. "It's been in my side yard in Arvada for 10 years. It's the only one left. Nobody in that lot moved. I said an unforgivable thing to that girl in your driveway with my daughter's flowers in my mouth," Diane said. "And I have thought about it for 8 days, and I could not come up with one single way to take it back. And then it occurred to me at 4 o'clock this morning that I could not take it back, but I could hand it over." "Diane. It goes in the ground at her building." Diane picked the bucket up again. "That's what I've decided. She doesn't have to know she's not going to be here, I don't care. I'm going to put my daughter's rose at the front of that woman's building, and then I'm going to go home, and I am going to sleep for about a year. Southside Ethan." He took the bucket out of her hands. They planted it at 2:40 on a Friday afternoon, with Marlene Prine directing from a folding chair and Frank Delgado holding the hose, and Diane Kessler knelt in the dirt in front of a rec center she had never been inside and packed the soil down with both hands. "Sarah would have liked her," Diane said. "Yeah. That's not a nice thing I'm saying. That's a complaint." Diane sat back on her heels. "Sarah would have liked her enormously, and it would have been extremely annoying for me." The 11th item was finished at 7:50 in the evening. Ethan drove to the extended stay off Colfax and knocked on the door of 214 at 8:50 on a Friday night with a folded piece of paper in his hand. Lily opened it 4 inches. "How'd you get the room number?" "Ray called 9 places." "Of course he did." "Can I come in?" "No." "Okay." He held the paper out. "Then take this and shut the door." She looked at it. She didn't take it. "What is it?" "It's your list," Ethan said. "It's done. All 11. The mount on the fan was cracked. You were right that it wasn't the blades, and the bearing came out in about 9 pieces. So you were right about that too. And Frank Delgado wants you to know that he redid the strike plate twice, because he did it wrong the first time, and he's very upset about it." Lily's hand came up and covered her mouth. "You didn't have to. I'm not finished, and then I'll go." He put the list in her hand and let go of it. "I came here to say one thing, and it isn't stay. I'm taking stay off the table permanently. I said it in a gravel lot at 7 in the morning, and it was the single most selfish sentence I've ever said to another person, and I've been sick about it for a day and a half. Ethan, you told me to ask you something better." He put his hands in his pockets. "So here it is. Go take the job. It's a good job, and you want it, and you earned it, and I would think less of you if you didn't. That's not me being noble, that's just true. And then if you can stand it, let me drive out there." She didn't say anything. "Not to move," he said. "I'm not going to show up on your doorstep with a truck and make it your problem. It's 900 miles. That's 13 hours. That's a Friday night and a Sunday night twice a month, and I've got a shop that closes at 5, and a kid who wants to see the arch, and I would like to spend the next year of my life doing that." "You'll do it for 6 weeks." "Maybe." "No, I'm serious." Her voice went hard. "That's not a jab. Everybody does it for 6 weeks, Ethan. 6 weeks is easy. 6 weeks is exciting. And then it's February, and there's ice on I-70, and somebody's kid has strep, and the phone calls get shorter, and then it's a text that takes 6 hours." "Yeah," he said. "It might be." She blinked. "You're supposed to argue. I'm not going to stand in a motel hallway and swear to you about February." He shook his head. "I've got no way to prove February to you tonight. Neither does anybody. All I've got is that I did 11 things on a list today for a woman who wasn't going to be there to see them, and I'd like the chance to still be doing that in February. And if I'm not, then you'll have found something out about me that cost you a couple of phone calls instead of your whole life." Lily Carter stood in that doorway with a punch list in her hand and started to cry, and she was furious about it. "That's not fair." "I know. That's an extremely unfair thing to say to somebody at 9 o'clock at night." She wiped her face with her wrist. "You couldn't have led with that 9 months ago. You could not have said one honest sentence in 9 months, and now you're doing it in a hallway." Lily. "What? I'm not asking for an answer." He stepped back. "That's the whole point. I'm not going to stand here and wait for you to give me something because that's just stay in a different shirt. I'm going to go home. And Saturday, you're going to get in that truck, and I'm not going to be standing in the road being sad at you because you have got enough to carry." He got about 4 steps down the hall. "Ethan." He turned. "The bench," she said. "In the wood shop. Did you find the key?" "Not yet." "Look in the drawer," Lily said and shut the door. She left at 6:15 on Saturday morning. He knew because Marlene called him at 6:20 and said she watched the whole thing from her porch, and that the girl had backed out slow and stopped at the end of Pinewood for about 10 seconds before she turned, and Marlene had wanted him to know about the 10 seconds. He went to the wood shop at 7 and pulled the drawer under the bench. The key was in it. And under the key was a single sheet of drafting paper, and on it in pencil was the community garden. The whole thing. 22 beds, the ramp, the water line, the corner where the ground fell off drawn to scale with the dimensions written in the margins in that handwriting, and in the bottom right, where an architect signs she had written for whoever finishes it. Ethan sat down on that bench and put his head in his hands. He drove out the first time 19 days later. Emma slept from Hayes to Salina. They got in at 10:40 at night, and Lily was standing in the parking lot of an apartment complex in a t-shirt, because she'd been standing out there since 9:40, and Emma came out of the back seat like a fired round and hit her at about waist height. And Ethan stood by the truck and watched a woman hold on to his daughter in a parking lot in Missouri, and did not trust himself to speak for a minute. They saw the arch. Emma got a hat. He drove home Sunday night 13 hours and opened the shop Monday at 7. Week 3 was a phone call about drainage. Week 5 was Emma reading her science fair, rewrite out loud over speaker, while Ethan changed brake pads. Week 7. Lily went quiet for 4 days. He did not call twice. He called once on the second day and said, "No news, just checking." And then he waited, and on the 4th day she called him back at 11 at night and said, "I have to tell you something and you're going to hate it." "Okay." "They want to send me to Omaha. 8 months. It's the riverfront thing. It's the biggest thing they've got, and they picked me, and I don't even know why they picked me." Ethan sat down on his own back step. "Congratulations," he said. "Ethan, that's another 400 miles. That's 17 hours from you. That's not twice a month, that's..." "Lily." "What?" "Congratulations," he said again. "I mean it. When do you go?" There was a long silence on the phone. "You're not going to say anything else." "There's nothing else to say. It's yours. You go do it." She was quiet so long he thought the call had dropped. "Okay," she said in a completely different voice. "Okay. All right." The rec center opened on the second Saturday in September. She did not come. He had known she wasn't coming for 2 weeks, and it still knocked the wind out of him at about 10 in the morning when he looked at the door. "She could have flown," Danny Henderson said. "She could have." "So why didn't she?" "Because she told me if she stood in that room she wasn't going to be able to get back on the plane," Ethan said, "and I'd rather have her honest in Kansas City than wrecked in Denver." There were 240 people in that building. The county sent a woman named Vance, who stood in the back with a name tag on and did not say much, and when the moment came, Ethan Walker got up in front of 240 people, which he had never done in his life, and spoke for 90 seconds. He said that he had lived 4 blocks from that building for 11 years and had never once slowed down to look at it. He said that everybody in that room had driven past it boarded up, and every single one of them had decided it was somebody else's. He said that one woman moved on to Pinewood in October, took a bad job for free, and got told by 4 separate people that it was ambitious for a small operation. And he said, "Her name is Lily Carter, and she's not here. And I want the name said out loud in this room because I have watched people in this town spend a year calling her the gardener." Danny Henderson filmed the whole thing on his phone. She watched it at 11 that night in Missouri and called him at 11:40 and could not talk for the first 30 seconds. Bill Ostrander, the man from the building department who had written nothing on his clipboard back in July, wrote something in October. He wrote 4 pages unsolicited to Cedar Ridge Development Group about a volunteer restoration in a county he inspected for and a designer he had watched. Answer 30 questions in 40 minutes without one wrong permit number. Ethan found out about it the same week she did. "They want to open a Front Range office," Lily said on the phone on a Tuesday in November, and her voice was doing something strange. "Denver, Ethan. They've been talking about it for 2 years, and they want somebody to run it, and they offered it to me this morning." Ethan stood in the middle of his shop with a wrench in his hand. "Say that again." "They want me to run the Colorado office." "Lily. And I need to say something first, and I need you to let me say the whole thing." She took a breath. "I'm not coming back for you. I know. No, listen to me because this matters more than anything else I'm going to say for the rest of my life." Her voice shook. "I took the job in June because Denver told me I was a small operation. I did not leave because of you, and I am not coming back because of you. I'm coming back because I asked for something and I got it. And it happens to be in the same city as you. And that is the order it has to be in, Ethan. Do you understand me? It has to be in that order, or I'll spend 20 years wondering." "It's in that order," Ethan said. "Say it back." "You got what you asked for," he said, "and it happens to be here. And I had nothing to do with it. And if I'd tried to have something to do with it, you'd have been right to hang up on me." Lily Carter started laughing and crying at the same time 900 miles away. "Bill Ostrander," she said. "Bill Ostrander wrote 4 pages. He wrote nothing on that clipboard in July, and I thought he was a coward, and I've been wrong about a lot of people this year." She came back the week before Thanksgiving. She did not move into the gray house on Pinewood because it had been rented in August to a couple with a beagle. She got a place in the Highlands with an office in the front room, and Ethan drove the truck, and Ray Dominguez sat on a bucket and supervised with 2 bad knees, and Emma carried exactly 1 lamp, and then declared herself finished. The first thing Lily put in the ground at that new place was a rose in a 5-gallon bucket that had spent 4 months at the south side of a rec center on 4th Street. Diane Kessler drove in from Arvada to show her how deep. They stood in that yard, the 2 of them, for about an hour. Nobody heard what was said. Ethan stayed inside on purpose and washed dishes that were already clean, and when Diane came in, she had dirt on both knees, and her eyes were red, and all she said was, "She knows about the Duchess now. I told her myself. I wasn't going to have her hear it from you." The Saturday after Thanksgiving. Ethan and Lily sat on the back step at the house on Pinewood in a yard that had 8-foot serviceberries drawn on a piece of paper in a sock drawer and 2-foot serviceberries in the actual ground. Emma was inside doing something loud. "Ray fixed your step," Lily said. "Ray did not fix my step. Ray watched me fix my step and told me I was doing it wrong. Marlene told me you fixed the sink. Marlene tells everybody everything. She does." Lily was quiet a second. "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah." "That night at the motel, when you walked away." She turned the cup in her hands. "Were you sure?" "No," Ethan said. "I was sure I was going to throw up in the parking lot." "But you walked." "You told me to ask you something better," he said. "The better thing was leaving you alone to decide. That's the only thing I had that I hadn't already ruined." Lily nodded slowly at the yard. Then she said, "Hey, do you still think I'll never find a husband?" Ethan Walker set his cup down on the step. "No," he said. "Why?" "Because I think you already found one," he said. "He was standing about 3 feet away from you in a yard for 9 months, and he was too stubborn and too scared to figure out that you'd already picked him." Lily looked over at him. "Is that a proposal, Ethan?" "No," he said. "That's a confession. The proposal's going to be a lot better than that, and you're going to have to wait for it, and I'd like it on the record that I said so first." Winter did the thing Winter does in Colorado, which is arrive twice and mean it the second time. The office opened January 5th. Cedar Ridge gave her 1,100 square feet in a converted warehouse off 38th and a budget for 2 hires, and Lily Carter hired a 23-year-old draftsman named Priya and a foreman named Cordell, who had been laid off in November and had 4 kids, and she called Ethan at 9 at night on her first day and said, "I have staff. Ethan, people are going to depend on me for rent. You've had people depending on you for rent your whole life. You just never billed for it." That's not comforting. It wasn't supposed to be comforting. It was supposed to be true. The 4th Street garden broke ground in February, which everybody told her was insane. "You can't put in a water line in February," Frank Delgado said. "You can put in a water line in February. You just can't put in a water line in February cheaply." That's what I said. "No, Frank, you said can't. Those are 2 different words, and I care about the difference." And then February did exactly what she had promised it would do, which Ethan thought about later and could not decide whether to call luck or a test. Emma got strep on a Tuesday. A real one, 103, the kind where an 8-year-old stops arguing, which was how Ethan always knew it was serious. He called the shop and told Danny Henderson, who was working part-time for him now, to move everything. He sat up with her Tuesday night and Wednesday night. Thursday morning he came out to the kitchen at 6, and there was a woman asleep sitting up in his living room chair with her boots still on. "Lily." What time did you get here?" 2. She sat up and her face had a seam in it from the chair. "Cordell's running the trench today. I called him at midnight and told him I'd be late, and he said, quote, obviously. You drove across town at 2 in the morning. I drove across town at 2 in the morning because you sent me a text at 11 that said, we're fine, and I have never once in my life believed a man who says we're fine." She rubbed her eyes. "Where is she?" "Sleeping. Fever broke around 4. "Okay." Lily stood up. "Then I'm making eggs because you look like the inside of a mailbox." Ethan stood in his own kitchen at 6 in the morning and watched a woman crack eggs into a pan in his house and felt something in his chest go so quiet it scared him. "It's February," he said. Lily's hand stopped over the skillet. "Yeah," she said. "I noticed." March came in warm and went out wrong. Marlene Prine died on a Sunday night in the second week in her own bed, 79 years old, and Ray Dominguez found her Monday morning because Marlene had never in 19 years failed to be on that porch by 7, and Ray had walked down at 10 past to see about it. He called Ethan from her front step and could not get the sentence out on the first try. Ethan sat in the shop with the phone against his ear and looked at nothing for a while after Ray hung up. He drove home at noon. He went into the garage. He stood in front of the bench where a lamp had sat for 6 weeks the summer before, and he put both hands flat on the wood, and he stayed like that for a long time. Lily found him there at 2. "Ray called me." "Yeah." "Ethan, I finished her lamp in August," he said. "You know that I finished it in August, and I walked it down there, and she opened the door, and she said, quote, well, it's about damn time, and then she made me sit down and eat a piece of pie I did not want." That sounds like her. She sat in a folding chair in a gravel lot for 9 hours in July, telling grown men they were doing it wrong. His voice came apart in the middle. "She was 79. She couldn't hold a hammer. She came anyway. I know. I said a thing in a yard in June," Ethan said, "and she was the only person on that whole street who came and told me to my face that she'd laughed with everybody else and it had kept her up nights." Lily put her hand flat on his back and left it there. "She told me too," she said. The Friday I left. She brought me a sandwich and she stood in my driveway and she said I laughed and I'm sorry and I'm too old to pretend I don't know why I did it." Lily's eyes were wet. "She said it's because if I laughed at you, I wasn't the one being laughed at." 79 years old standing in a driveway saying that to a woman she barely knew. "She never told me that part." "She wouldn't have. She told me because she thought she'd never see me again." There were 110 people at the service, which was more than anybody expected because Marlene Prine had spent 19 years on a porch knowing everybody's business. And it turned out that being known even by a nosy woman in a housecoat is a thing people show up for. And 11 days later, a lawyer in Lakewood called Lily Carter at her office and asked if she was the person in charge of the community garden on 4th Street. I am. Then I've got a check for you, and I'd like you to sit down before I say the number. She did not sit down. She heard the number, and she sat down anyway. That's her house, Lily said. That's the proceeds of the sale of the property, less some bequests to a nephew in Ohio. She revised the will in October. Papers turning. There's a condition. Do you want the condition? Yes. The condition is, quote, they have to put my name on something small. Not a plaque on the building. Something small that people actually use. A bench or a spigot. I don't want to be a plaque. Lily Carter put the phone down on her desk and cried in front of Priya, who had worked there for 9 weeks and had no idea what to do, and then she picked the phone back up and said, "We'll do the bench." There were 406 people in that garden the day it opened, and the bench by the gate said Marlene Prine on a strip of brass the size of a ruler. And every summer after that, there were 3 or 4 old women sitting on it at any given hour, running their mouths about everybody who walked past, which was, as Ray Dominguez said out loud at the ribbon, exactly what she'd been going for. April was when the phone call came that Ethan had been waiting 9 months for without knowing it. I was at Lily's place in the Highlands on a Thursday night when her phone rang on the counter and she looked at the screen and her whole body changed. "Who is it?" "My father." She did not answer it. It rang again 11 minutes later. She did not answer it. At 9:40, she sat down on the floor with her back against the cabinets, which Ethan had never seen her do, and said, "He's got a thing on his kidney. My mother told me last month. He wants to come up and see the office." "Okay. It's not okay. You don't know what you're saying okay to." She pulled her knees up. "Ethan, that's the Kroger parking lot. That's the man in the Kroger parking lot. He's 66, and he's got a thing on his kidney, and he wants to drive up from Pueblo and stand in my office and be proud of me for 2 hours, and then go home, and every single cell in my body wants to let him. So let him." "And then what?" "And then he goes home," Ethan said, "and you decide on Friday how you feel instead of deciding right now on the floor." She looked up at him. "That's very annoying." "I've been told." Gene Carter came up on the second Saturday in April, in a Ford Ranger with a Pueblo plate and a windbreaker zipped to the throat, and he was smaller than Ethan expected, and quieter, and he shook Ethan's hand and said, "Gene," and nothing else for about 40 minutes. They walked the garden. Lily talked. She talked more than Ethan had ever heard her talk about grades and drainage, and the 22 beds, and the way the ground fell off at the corner, and what she'd done about it. And her father walked beside her with his hands behind his back, and nodded, and said at intervals, "Huh." And then, at the north end, a man Ethan had never seen before came over from the parking lot with a folding wagon and said cheerfully to Jean, "You her dad. You must be proud. She's done a heck of a job for a gal her size up and down these beds all day." Ethan felt the whole world narrow to a point. He did not look at Lily. He learned later that she had already started counting. "1," Ethan said. The man blinked. "Sorry. I'm counting to 6, Ethan said, "and I'd like you to think about what you just said before I get there, because if you can hear it back, this is going to be a short conversation, and if you can't, I'm going to explain it to you in front of her father." The man went red to the ears. "I meant it nice." "They always do," Ethan said. 2. Okay. Okay. The man put his hands up. "Ma'am, I apologize. That came out of my mouth stupid." "It did," Lily said. "Thank you." I went off toward the beds with his wagon, and nobody moved for a second. And then Gene Carter said in a voice that had gone strange, "Lily." "Don't, Dad." 1998. He was looking at the dirt. "You were 16. We were coming out of the Kroger on Northern, and a kid in a Camaro yelled something out the window, and I stood there, and then I said, 'Let's just go, Lil,' and we got in the truck, and I drove home, and I turned on the radio." Lily's face was doing something Ethan had never seen. "You remember that?" "Sweetheart, I have thought about that parking lot at least once a week for 26 years. Gene rubbed his mouth with the back of his hand. "I've had a whole life. I've had 2 knee replacements and a foreclosure and a thing on my kidney, and there is not one single day of my life I would take back except 6 seconds in a Kroger parking lot. You never said anything. What was I going to say? His voice cracked. You were 16. Then you were 20. Then you were 30, and you lived 4 hours away, and you called your mother instead of me, and I knew exactly why, and I figured I had earned it. Dad? I watched a stranger do it in 11 months, Jean said, and it took him 1 second, and I want you to marry him. Ethan said, Sir, I'm not talking to you, son. Jean did not look up. I'm talking to my daughter, and I've got about 4 minutes of courage in me, and I have to spend it all right now. He took a breath. I should have gotten out of that truck, he said. I should have gone after that car on foot like a lunatic and made you embarrassed of me for a week, instead of what I did, which was make you carry it for 26 years by yourself. And your mother told me it wasn't too late, and I said it was because that was easier. And then she told me about the kidney thing, and I thought, well, all right, Jean, say it now, or don't ever say it. Lily Carter stood in the middle of a garden she had drawn on drafting paper in a rented woodshop and put her hands over her face. That's all, her father said. That's the whole speech. I practiced it in the truck at a rest stop in Colorado Springs, and it went better there. Dad. It's all right if it's not enough. It's enough, Lily said. Shut up, it's enough. And she crossed 6 feet of dirt and put her arms around a 66-year-old man in a zipped windbreaker, and Ethan Walker turned around and walked 20 steps away and looked at a fence for a while, because some things you do not stand there and watch. The thing on Jean's kidney came out in June, and it was the kind you get lucky with. Emma made the science team in the spring on the 2nd try, which she announced by walking into the kitchen, dropping her backpack on the floor and saying, Call her. Call who? Dad. I'm asking who. You know who. Emma had her arms crossed. She said do it again in the spring, in the letter. So call her. Lily picked up on the 2nd ring, and Emma said before hello, I made it. There was a sound on the other end of the phone that Ethan would remember for the rest of his life, and it was not words. The barbecue was the 2nd Saturday in June, 1 year to the weekend, and Ray Dominguez turned 63, and Denise made ribs again, and the whole street came, and there were 19 people in that backyard instead of 11, because that was what a year had done to Pinewood. Ethan had the ring in his jacket for 4 hours and 35 minutes. He knew because Ray asked him about 11 times. Is it in there? Ray. I'm only asking because you keep touching your chest like you're having an event. Would you go sit down? I'm 63. I'm decorative. Ray took a pull on his beer. You're going to do it here. I'm going to do it here. In the yard. In the yard. Same spot. Ethan looked at him. Same spot, he said. It happened at 7:40 in the evening, and it happened because Frank Delgado, who had never in 61 years had a thought he didn't say out loud, said across the yard, Lily, sit down. My God, you're making the rest of us look bad, which was word for word what Trent Boyle had said a year earlier, and the entire yard went dead silent at once. 19 people. Silent. Frank looked around with a rib in his hand. What did I say? And Ethan Walker set down his plate and stood up. Nothing, he said. You said exactly the right thing. Frank and I've been standing here for 4 hours trying to figure out how to start this, so honestly, thank you. Lily Carter, who was on one knee in the grass, fixing the wheel on a toy dump truck for Ray's grandson, because it had broken again, went absolutely still. Ethan. Stay down there a second. You're already in position, and I'm going to need the room. Somebody laughed. Denise Dominguez said, Oh Lord, and put her hand over her mouth. A year ago I stood in this yard, Ethan said, with a beer in my hand, in front of everybody who's here right now. Most of you and I made a joke about this woman dying alone. And she got up off that grass and she walked over to me, and she made me say it again out loud in front of all of you, because she had already decided she was done being polite about it. Ethan, Lily said, and then she said, maybe you're why. He put his hand in his jacket. And I have spent 1 year trying to earn a sentence that she only said because she thought she was leaving town in 19 days. Emma, standing by the cooler with a popsicle, said in a loud whisper, Dad? I'm getting there, Em. He walked across that yard. I'm not going to ask you to stay, he said. I took stay off the table in a motel hallway, and I meant it, and I'm never putting it back. You can go to Omaha. You can go to Kansas City. If Cedar Ridge sends you to Boise for 2 years, I will learn where Boise is, and I will drive there, and I will not once ask you to be conveniently located, because that is what everybody has asked you your whole life, and I am not going to be one more. Lily's hands were shaking on the toy truck. So here's what I'm asking instead. He got down on one knee in Ray Dominguez's grass in front of 19 people at 7:40 on a Saturday in June. Wherever you go, let me be the one who's already there when you get back. He opened the box. Nobody in that yard breathed. Lily Carter looked at him for a long moment, and then she laughed. And it was the loud, unembarrassed laugh he had first heard in a driveway at 6:40 in the morning in October. And she said, "Ethan Walker, I have been on my knees in this grass this entire time. You could have done this 10 seconds earlier and had a better story." Is that a yes? It's a yes, you idiot man. The yard came apart. Ray Dominguez put both hands over his face. Denise screamed. Emma hit them at a dead run and knocked her father flat on his back in the grass, and Frank Delgado stood there holding a rib saying, "So it was me. It was because of what I said." And nobody answered him, and he told that story at every gathering on that street for the next 15 years, and the details got better every single time. Jean Carter drove up from Pueblo the next morning to shake Ethan's hand and did not let go of it for a while. They married in September in the garden. Not in a church. In the garden on 4th Street, in the corner where the ground fell off in front of 200 and some people who mostly did not know each other because the guest list was every volunteer who had ever put a hand on that building. Danny Henderson, 19 now and in his second year at trade school, ran the sound. Bill Ostrander came in a suit and brought a bottle of something and would not talk about the 4 pages ever, not once to anybody. The woman from the county Vance was not invited, and she came anyway and stood at the back and stayed 40 minutes and left an envelope on the gift table with no card in it and a check big enough that Cordell whistled. Diane Kessler did the flowers. That was not a small thing, and everybody who knew what it meant knew what it meant. Diane Kessler drove in from Arvada 3 days running and cut roses off a plant that had spent 10 years in her side yard in a bucket, and she stood in a kitchen in the Highlands with Lily Carter wiring stems, and at some point on the second day she said without looking up, "I want to be at the hospital." "What?" "If there's ever another one." Diane kept wiring. "A baby, if there's ever one. I want to be in the waiting room, that's all. I'm not asking to be anything. I know exactly what I am and what I'm not, and I've had a year to think about it, and I would like to be in the waiting room." Lily put down the wire. "Diane? You don't have to answer." "You'd be the second call," Lily said. "The first one's my mother, and that's only because she'd kill me." Diane Kessler nodded at a rose for about 8 seconds. "That's fine," she said. "Seconds fine. Seconds more than I had any right to." Jean Carter walked his daughter across a garden she had drawn herself in a windbreaker because he refused a jacket, and when Lily's mother Nan asked him about it, he said, "She met me in this, she's marrying him with me in this." And Ray Dominguez, 63 years old, with 2 artificial knees, stood up as best man and got through 11 words before he had to stop and start over. "I want to say something about the 2 years I wasted," he said, "so that the man standing next to me understands why I have been such an unbearable pain in his neck since last June." Ethan said into the microphone, "He has been." "I know what I am," Ray said. "I'm a man who let a woman named Denise Ruiz do the brave thing for both of us in 1988, and I have loved her for 37 years, and I have never once been the one who started it. And when I saw the same thing happening on my own street to a man I like more than my own brother, I decided I was going to be as annoying as God would let me be." He turned around. "You did it, though," Ray said. "That's the part. I nagged, but I didn't do it." He drove to a motel off Colfax and gave up the only thing he wanted out loud on purpose, and walked away. And I want everybody in this garden to understand that is the single bravest thing I have witnessed in 63 years. Emma Walker, 9 in a green dress holding a bouquet she had refused to let anybody else carry, said loudly, "He threw up in the parking lot after." 200 people lost it. I did not throw up, Ethan said. You said you were going to. There's a difference, Em. They put the service berries in at the new house in October, 4 of them, and the ones on Pinewood stayed because Ethan did not sell that house. He rented it to Cordell and his 4 kids at a number that made his accountant call him twice. You're leaving money on the table, the accountant said. I know. Substantial money. Yeah, Ethan said. Send me the paperwork. The fuse box label in that house still said Sarah's handwriting on panel 6, and Ethan drove over one Saturday with a label maker and stood in front of it for about 10 minutes and then put the label maker back in his pocket and went home and did not explain that to anybody, and Lily, who could have asked, never once did. The following spring, Lily Carter took the riverfront job in Omaha for 4 months, and Ethan drove out twice a month and did not complain about it in her hearing one single time, and complained about it to Ray Dominguez constantly, and Ray enjoyed every second of it. 2 years later, there was a boy, and they named him Raymond, which caused a 65-year-old man to walk out of a waiting room in a hospital in Denver and stand in a corridor by himself for 4 minutes. Diane Kessler was in that waiting room. Second call. She held that baby before Gene did, because Gene's truck hit traffic on I-25 outside Castle Rock. And when Gene finally got there, he took one look at the two of them and said, "Well, you beat me." And Diane said, "I've been waiting 11 years for a waiting room, Gene. I wasn't going to lose to a Ford." They were friends after that. Genuinely. It made no sense to anybody. Emma turned 16 on a Tuesday in March. Diane brought the letter on the Saturday driving in from Arvada with it in her purse the way she had carried it for 16 years, and she put it on the table and said, "I'm going to go sit in the car." "Grandma, you don't have to." "I do, sweetheart. I've got my own version of this, and I read mine 11 years ago, and I have not been the same person since, and it is not a thing to do with an audience." Emma took it out to the back step. The service berries were over the roof by then. That was the thing Ethan noticed while he stood at the kitchen window and did not go outside because his daughter had asked him not to. 8 feet had turned into 18. The birds came in April exactly the way a pencil drawing in a sock drawer had promised they would. Emma came in 40 minutes later. Her face was wrecked and steady at the same time, which was a thing she got from her mother. "Dad?" "Yeah." "Sit down." "Em, sit down." She put the letter on the table between them. "I'm going to read you one part, not all of it. The rest is mine." "Okay." Emma Walker, 16 years old, read out loud in a voice that only broke once. "Emma, if your dad ever brings somebody home, I want you to be hard on her for about a week. Make her earn it. That's your job, and I want you to do it right. And then after the week, let her in, and I mean all the way in, because your father is going to spend the whole time trying to decide whether she deserves him, and he is going to get it exactly backwards, and somebody in that house is going to have to be the one who's brave. It's going to have to be you, baby. I'm sorry. It's a lot to ask a 5-year-old. But you'll be older when you read this, and I think you'll already know." Emma looked up. "I was 8, she said. "Yeah. I was 8, and I told you to go get her." Her voice went. "Dad, I did it. I did the thing she asked, and I didn't even know she asked." Ethan Walker sat at his kitchen table and could not speak. Lily came in from the office at 6 and found the two of them still sitting there and stopped in the doorway with her keys in her hand. "What happened?" Emma got up and crossed the kitchen and put her arms around her hard, the way she had at waist height in a parking lot in Missouri when she was 8 years old. "A week," Emma said into her shoulder. "She said I only had to be hard on you for a week. I gave you like 4 days. Lily Carter looked over the top of that girl's head at her husband and did not understand yet, and understood enough. She got the whole letter later that night on the back step from Emma, out loud, all of it. They sat out there past midnight, the 3 of them, and at some point Ethan said, "She was right. I did get it exactly backwards." "For 9 months, Lily said. "For 11 years. Fair." He looked out at 18-foot trees that had been sticks in a pencil drawing. "She said, 'Don't decide what people deserve,'" he said. "Sarah did in mine. And you said the same thing to me in a parking lot on 4th Street at 7 in the morning, in different words, and I have thought about this a lot, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's just what the good ones know." What's that? That the whole business of deciding somebody deserves better than you, Ethan said, is just leaving first with a nicer coat on. Nobody said anything for a while. Hey, Lily said. Yeah. Do you still think I'll never find a husband? And Ethan Walker laughed out loud in his own backyard, the way his daughter had once told a woman he did not know how to laugh. Here is what that street learned, and it took them 11 years and one bad joke to learn it. Nobody was ever waiting for Lily Carter to become worthy. She was worthy in October in a driveway at 6:40 in the morning, hitting a starter with the heel of her hand. The only thing that ever changed was a frightened man who finally stopped calling his fear humility and stopped deciding what other people deserved and got off the step. She did not need saving. She needed one person to stand up inside of 6 seconds. And on the day it finally counted in a garden she built with her own 2 hands, he did it in 1.